Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into something I call the man versus the math. We're going to explore exactly what happens when the absolute, unforgiving mathematics of elite sports slams right into the fragile human mind.
All right, let's start with a visceral hook, right in the middle of the action. Picture this. It's February 2004. Juventus is gearing up to play Regina on this cold, wet, dreary night in Turin. And down on the pitch, a literal living legend is experiencing a terrifying internal breakdown. Gianluigi Buffon, you know him, arguably one of the greatest goalkeepers to ever play the game, suddenly feels this massive wave of absolute terror wash over him. As he later described it himself, "I felt fear I did not understand."
During that pre-match warm-up, Buffon's internal terror actually manifested physically. He started struggling to breathe. He felt a wave of dizziness hit him. But the most alarming sensation was this sharp, sudden tightness in his diaphragm, right between his chest and stomach. It was like he'd been physically struck. Without even realizing it in the moment, he was suffering a full-blown panic attack right there on the grass, in front of a stadium absolutely packed with screaming fans.
Paralyzed by this, he goes up to his goalkeeping coach, Ivano Bordin. Buffon's words are all coming out distorted, but Bordin just looks at him and calmly simply says, "Don't worry, Gigi, you don't have to play." And wow, that simple, empathetic phrase unexpectedly acted as a total lifeline. Buffon later explained that those exact words freed his stomach from the oppression of duty. By simply giving him the power of choice, Bordin released just enough pressure to let Buffon catch his breath and kind of trick his mind into getting through the next 90 minutes.
Okay, let's dive into this. How do we actually measure the pressure of a split-second decision? I mean, the kind of pressure that can trigger that profound of a human emotion. To really understand the staggering cognitive weight resting on a goalkeeper's shoulders, we got to look away from the emotion for just a second and examine the insanely complex mathematical reality of the position. This was brilliantly analyzed in a really comprehensive PLOS 1 scientific study that sought to map out the exact anatomy of a goalkeeper's decisions. See, a goalkeeper isn't just standing out there reacting purely on instinct. Mathematically speaking, they are constantly navigating a highly complex graph of inputs. They are continuously evaluating spatial parameters, metadata about the game, the state of the opposing team, and of course their own state of movement. Every little micro-adjustment, every half step to the left or right, is actually a calculated node in a vast, dynamic network of probabilities that's happening entirely in real time.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how staggering the sheer geometric math required to pull this off really is. A goalkeeper has to dynamically update their vertical position, their angle to the goal line, which mathematicians call alpha and beta, and their rotation relative to the ball line. And get this, they have to do all of this across a pitch that researchers have partitioned into very strict probability zones. Literally, every inch of movement drastically changes the geometry of the shot and ultimately the probability of a goal.
So to evaluate if a goalkeeper actually makes the mathematically correct choice, the scientists built something called the oracle. Sounds intense, right? The oracle is basically a probability distribution estimated from historical dataset events. Specifically, it was built using 399 World Cup plays involving elite keepers, guys just like Buffon. This oracle acts as the ultimate judge. It quantifies the optimal mathematical decision in any scenario, telling us exactly what the highest percentage move is at any given fraction of a second.
Using this oracle, the science evaluates these massive, high-stakes decisions by comparing two very distinct metrics. First, you have absolute performance, which just looks at the raw probability of a goal being scored. But relative performance takes it a step further. It normalizes the data by comparing the keeper's choice against the baseline goal potential of that exact pitch situation. Essentially, it measures whether the keeper's positioning actively improved their odds of making a save or if it made the situation worse.
When a player successfully solves this math, the results are undeniable. The data shows that in successful saves, goalkeepers optimize their position in the exact fractions of a second before a shot. Wait for it, exactly 83.33% of the time. That is huge. This means the vast majority of saves out there aren't just lucky athletic reflexes. They are the direct result of flawless, predictive, mathematical positioning executed under immense stress.
But now, let's look at the flip side. In plays where goals were allowed, that positional optimization only occurred 21.87% of the time. That contrast is absolutely staggering. It proves just how razor-thin and unforgiving the margin for error really is. If you fail to solve that complex geometrical equation in the tiny split second before the striker's foot even hits the ball, well, the odds instantly, overwhelmingly turn against you.
And remember the environment where all of this is happening. A goalkeeper has to choose between a central near or a side-far positioning strategy in real time. These micro-calculations, they are not happening in a quiet laboratory or a calm classroom. No, they are happening in a fraction of a second, with a ball rocketing toward them at highway speeds, all amidst the absolutely deafening roar of 80,000 screaming spectators.
Because of this extreme pressure, researchers measured something they call entropy in goalkeepers' decisions. Entropy basically represents the immense variability of a player's actions when they're under stress, and they found that goalkeepers' decision entropy varied wildly, anywhere between 24% and 71%. This proves, mathematically, that even the very best players in the world cannot completely escape the random, unpredictable chaos of the game. Absolute perfection is literally a statistical impossibility.
So the crucial point is, imagine carrying this incredibly demanding cognitive and mathematical load, but as a fragile human being. Returning to Buffon's internal monologue, we really see how the sterile math and those dismissive public opinions clashed with his profound exhaustion. He was haunted by his own dark thoughts, echoing the voices of critics who viewed him merely as, and I quote, someone who earns a lot of money and is successful just because you kick a ball.
Behind that facade of the invincible athlete perfectly navigating pitch geometry, there was this intense, hidden darkness. For months, Buffon endured terrible sleep, just waking up groggy and completely drained. He was paralyzed by a deep fear of disappointing his parents and his fans, constantly feeling like his legs entirely lacked the energy to even move. He was physically and emotionally exhausted. Finally, Juventus's team doctor, Riccardo Agricola, gave this invisible enemy a name: depression.
What really stands out most here is the timeline of his extraordinary resilience. Think about it. In February 2004, he suffers that severe, career-threatening panic attack. But rather than fade away, over the next year, he actually confronts and treats his underlying depression head-on. Because he conquered both the relentless mathematical probabilities on the pitch and the brutal chemical imbalances in his mind, he was able to play professional football at the absolute highest level until he retired in 2023 at the age of 45. Incredible.
As fans, we demand absolute machine-like perfection from our athletes, right? We measure their performance against the objective, unforgiving probability of the oracle. But what unseen battles are really being fought behind that facade of athletic perfection? The next time you watch a goalkeeper make a split-second save, or see any athlete step out onto the field, remember the incredible human willpower required to execute impossible math under impossible pressure. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and honestly, I hope this changes how you watch the game.